What's up guys and welcome back to Clockwerk theory number 4. I've said this a lot of times. Clockwerk is my favorite villain in the Sly Cooper series. I know he's appeared only once, but what he's done basically describes him as a psychopath. He's been hunting down the Coopers for generations. He's been stalking them. And plus, he's very mysterious. There's a lot of unanswered questions. I just want to dig in a bit deeper into his origins. Is he actually from ancient Egypt? Could Clockwerk originate from Bob Cooper's time, 10,000 BC? We have an Easter egg in Sly 4, and some of you believe that he might actually be from that time. Plus, if you've played Sly 4, there's some treasures that might hint towards Clockwerk's return. So with that being said, let's jump right into this theory. Okay, first, could Clockwerk have been born in 10,000 BC when Bob Cooper existed? Maybe. But honestly, I don't think so. Okay, we have this Easter egg, we see Clockwerk in Bob Cooper's time. But the question is, did Clockwerk's species exist during 10,000 BC? Okay, we had large-looking mammals back in the Ice Age. Isn't Clockwerk a huge bird? Could he have originated from that timeline? I don't know. The only large bird discovered during the Ice Age is the Teratorn. It's a huge bird, basically, but it's not described as an owl. So how could Clockwerk exist during that time period? Okay, if owls didn't exist in 10,000 BC, then how come Bob Cooper exists? He's a raccoon. Yes, but he's not an evolved version of a raccoon. I mean, look at his size. Clockwerk looks like an evolved version of a bird species. Okay, so if Clockwerk wasn't born during 10,000 BC, then how come we see him in an Easter egg? An Easter egg could just be an Easter egg, like a reference, but it could also hint towards stuff we could see in the future. Okay, in this screenshot, we see Clockwerk all in metal. If he really is born in 10,000 BC, how did he even turn metal in the first place? We're talking about the Ice Age period. Forget Penelope, forget Dr. M. Forget about the whole time traveling for now. Metal forging began around 4500 BC. How did Clockwerk get his claws on metal? How did he figure out metal forging? Who knows, maybe Clockwerk was very smart for some reason, but I just don't see it. Look at Bob Cooper. We're talking about 10,000 BC, he's still evolving. Bob Cooper can't even speak. Clockwerk having the brains during that time period? I don't think that's the case. Now, some of you believe that Bob Cooper stole his wife's eggs, and maybe that turned him mad. If he did turn mad because of that, wouldn't he want to kill Bob Cooper? I mean, he just could have ended the whole thing straight away. So that's the thing. Clockwerk originating from 10,000 BC? I don't think so. 1. I don't think Clockwerk would have the brains to turn himself immortal. And 2. Metal forging began around 4500 BC. Of course, if we're talking about someone time traveling to 10,000 BC, then it's a different story. That person, whoever it is, would turn Clockwerk all metallic, immortal. But since Clockwerk would be from 10,000 BC, he wouldn't know how to speak. He wouldn't know how to speak English, how to communicate with the person. Okay, yes, we had the Cooper gang communicating with Bob Cooper, but convincing Clockwerk into turning metal? How would the person convince Clockwerk to accept that idea? Okay, maybe that person convinced Clockwerk to turn metal. Maybe the person installed some sort of translator. But we're still talking about brains of 10,000 BC. Okay, his brain probably evolved through time, since you know he lived on for generations. But still, there's just too many questions when it comes to 10,000 BC. Plus, Bob Cooper was revealed once Sanzaru stepped in. There was no Bob Cooper when Sucker Punch was working on Sly. So maybe that could give us a small hint. Of course, they could try to implement Bob Cooper in the whole storyline about Clockwerk and stuff. But really, I think Clockwerk might have originated from ancient Egypt. And why? There's one huge hint. We have this picture, we have Clockwerk's silhouette right behind Sly Cooper. Plus, think about it. Egyptians, their minds were a lot more evolved. So Clockwerk making himself immortal in ancient Egypt, I think it's more likely in the end. Plus, didn't Lepidopter's blimp crash into ancient Egypt? Yup. He probably figured out a way how to understand the whole thing. He probably had the brains to do so. And if Clockwerk did turn immortal by himself, then it's probably possible. I mean, metal forging was a thing back in ancient Egypt. Think about that. Okay, if Clockwerk is born in ancient Egypt during Sly Cooper's time, then what language did he speak? He spoke Egyptian, Middle Egyptian to be more precise. We're talking about periods between 13,000 BC and 2000 BC. So Sly Cooper, Clockwerk, and the whole people back in ancient Egypt spoke Middle Egyptian. There's no way Clockwerk spoke English back then, unless he learned to speak English in ancient Egypt by meeting someone from the future. So how did Clockwerk speak English in Sly 1? It's very simple. He turned himself immortal, lived on for generations, and with time, he simply learned how to speak English. English, well, Old English to be more precise, began around years 400 and 500, during the 5th century, so speaking English during ancient Egypt, not very likely. Now, a short while ago, I came up with the video talking about how Sly could return home. During the video, I talked about the ideas of time traveling to ancient Egypt. Bentley's time machine needs a specific object or artifact of a specific era. Without it, the time machine doesn't work. Let's say Bentley were to take the Thieves Raccoonus. Are there any risks? Yes. He could lose the book, or someone could steal the book. Let's pretend Bentley uses the Thieves Raccoonus to time travel to ancient Egypt, since you know the book began in that time. So he takes it with him and then realizes that he lost it. Who do you think would find that book in ancient Egypt? It could probably be Clockwerk. There's a cutscene in Sly 2 where Sly mentions that Clockwerk's talons can cut through steel, and that was mentioned in the Thieves Raccoonus. What if Clockwerk stumbles upon that page? And what if he sees a picture of his claws all metal? Could that picture, right there, have been the start of his whole plan? Maybe, who knows really? It's just a picture. But the Thieves Raccoonus is written in English pretty much. How did Clockwerk understand it? I think he just stared at the picture. Why? Because he didn't keep the book with him. He understood nothing, so why keep the book? He probably just tossed it around, didn't care. But he didn't realize that he made a huge mistake. That book lived on for generations. That's what kept the Cooper line alive. Clockwerk didn't know that back then. So at first, he found the book, didn't care. But in the future, he realized that the book was essential. That's what kept the legacy alive. However, didn't Sly come and start the Thieves Raccoonus? Yes, he did. Didn't he write in Egyptian? He did. Wouldn't Clockwerk come across that page? Maybe or maybe not, but it's just one page we're talking about, so Clockwerk probably ignored it. Even if Clockwerk spoke Egyptian back then, he probably didn't care about what Sly was writing. If Clockwerk were to find the Thieves Raccoonus in ancient Egypt, the book that Bentley brought with him, would he be able to learn English just by reading the pages? I don't know really. If Clockwerk were to learn English by reading the book, then wouldn't he discover how to turn himself immortal? Maybe. I mean, if his talents were mentioned in the book, something else is probably mentioned in there as well. If he learned English by reading the book, he would gain a lot of ideas. Maybe a Cooper wrote down everything about Clockwerk, how he worked, what his body was made of, and stuff like that. And who knows, maybe Clockwerk found those pages. It's like a blueprint, let's say. So if Clockwerk understood the book in ancient Egypt, wouldn't that make him a winner? Wouldn't he be able to stop all of the Coopers? I'm gonna go with yes, why not? I mean, he would learn about all of their tactics and moves. So if the Coopers were able to beat him somehow, then that means he ignored the book when he saw it at first. So to summarize, if Clockwerk found the book in ancient Egypt, he probably just looked at it. Probably looked at the pictures. He was just curious, and eventually stumbled upon his talents. Now let's assume someone from the future turned Clockwerk all metallic. Wouldn't that be a bit difficult? And in what way? The person from the future would speak English. Clockwerk would speak Egyptian. How would the person convince Clockwerk to turn immortal? The person would probably translate whatever Clockwerk would say. And if he did turn immortal by the hands of someone, then a translator was probably installed. If so, then Clockwerk learned how to speak English during Sly Cummins' time. Or if a translator was not installed, he just learned how to speak English with time. Alright, now let's talk a bit more about the Clockwerk Easter eggs we see in Sly 4. The earliest one we see is in 10,000 BC. Does that mean that he's from 10,000 BC? No, unless someone time traveled and translated what Clockwerk was saying. Now, two things about these Easter eggs. One, these Easter eggs probably just show how Clockwerk was stalking all the Coopers throughout the generations. Or two, this could hint towards Clockwerk's new form. Let's call it Clockwerk 2.0. Now, why would Clockwerk have a new form? Well, it's because we see him in the Ice Age period. If Clockwerk is born in ancient Egypt, how could he be stalking Bob Cooper? I'm gonna guess that someone upgraded Clockwerk and gave him the ability to time travel. Plus, doesn't Clockwerk look a bit different in these Easter eggs? Yes, he looks smaller. Maybe that could be his new form. Like I said, these are just Easter eggs. They probably don't mean anything, but I'm assuming they do. So far, who hates Sly the most? Penelope. Okay, what's this whole situation with Penelope? My first theory was about Penelope time traveling to ancient Egypt and turning Clockwerk immortal. Now let's turn this theory around a little bit. Let's assume Clockwerk turned immortal by himself or by the hands of someone other than Penelope. Now this is ancient Egypt I'm talking about. Would Penelope time travel to ancient Egypt and upgrade Clockwerk, give him the ability to time travel? Maybe. Would she warn the creator of immortal Clockwerk that his plan failed in the future? Maybe. But by giving Clockwerk the ability to time travel in the past might cause a huge paradox. And why? Because Clockwerk would simply time travel to one period to another, and that would completely alter the future very easily. I don't think that Penelope would want to alter the future completely, so here's what I think. In Sly 2, we had Neela enter Clockwerk's frame. At a point, she felt this strange power growing inside of her. Could that have been Clockwerk awakening? Maybe. Before the hate chip was destroyed, maybe Clockwerk found a way to escape his body and enter some sort of computer. And whose computer would that be? Maybe Penelope's. If so, could Penelope be able to communicate with Clockwerk through a computer? Probably, yeah. Clockwerk's mind is basically a computer. I mean, he said a bunch of gibberish during Sly 1. It's like his mind was rebooting or was getting all buggy. Maybe eventually, Clockwerk would convince Penelope to make him a new body, a better body. But before doing so, she time travels and meets Arpeggio. And why? To give him blueprints on how to assemble Clockwerk. I mean, how did Arpeggio get his hands on blueprints? Maybe he was smart enough to figure the whole thing out. But let's just say he got blueprints from someone. That someone, maybe Penelope, wanted to test Clockwerk's parts, the old parts. But eventually she realized that those parts were way too old. Like Sly mentioned in the end, it's like time caught up with the parts. They all broke down. Could Penelope develop feelings for Clockwerk through a computer? That I don't know. But what if there's some sort of manipulation involved? What if Clockwerk manipulates Penelope into building him a brand new body? A body that's able to time travel. If Clockwerk does turn into 2.0 with the ability to time travel, would he meet his older self? Probably not. And why? Because he wouldn't want to risk altering the future. Doing something in the past can easily affect stuff in the future. But wait a second. Aren't we talking about a psychopath here? He hates the Coopers. What if he went to ancient Egypt and killed Sly Cooper? But wait, if he were to do so, wouldn't that erase Penelope? Not from existence, but Penelope would no longer be involved with the Coopers. There wouldn't even be a Cooper gang. And who knows, Clockwerk might just disappear, vanish because of that. I mean, that's how he turned into 2.0. Penelope made him. If he can't kill Sly Cooper, what would he do? Judging by the Easter eggs we see in Sly 4, he would probably just stalk the Coopers. Didn't he mention, "You Coopers always find a way to beat me in Sly 1? Yep, so Clockwerk 2.0 would time travel and find out why the Coopers always beat him in some way. Now a few things before I end the video, guys. In Sly 4, we can collect a bunch of treasures, right? There are two treasures which might hint towards Clockwerk's return. The first one is the Dragon Claw statue. By flipping it over, we can notice the words Clockwerk was here. Maybe this was the original Clockwerk who carved this when he was stalking the Coopers throughout the generations. And the second one is Clockwerk's eye. Now these are just treasures. Clockwerk's eye was found in 10,000 BC. So in the end, these treasures are just like references, kinda hinting us towards something. Since the original Clockwerk was created in ancient Egypt, well, that's what we assume. Could Bentley use that eye to time travel to ancient Egypt? Maybe, but would that guarantee him to time travel to the specific era? That we don't know. If Clockwerk was forged with the metals of ancient Egypt, then maybe the eye would take Bentley to Sly. Okay, if Clockwerk's eye still exists, does that mean that old Clockwerk might come back? Probably not. All of his parts were destroyed in Sly 2. The way I see it is this. His mind probably escaped his old body and entered some sort of computer. Eventually, someone, maybe Penelope, would be able to give him a brand new body. Bringing back the old Clockwerk from ancient Egypt will change the future completely. Maybe Sly's parents would be alive, unless Clockwerk decides to kill them again. But anyways guys, hopefully you've enjoyed this long, confusing theory. A lot of you are probably lost right now and very confused. It's okay. But it's just fun to come up with ideas and stuff. I mean, we've only seen Clockwerk in Sly 1. And you know what's even more fun? Discussing about these ideas with you guys. So if you haven't seen the previous theories regarding Clockwerk, you should definitely check them out. So out of all this video guys, what do you think is the most probable? Do you think Clockwerk might find himself a new body? Could this new robotic body give him the ability to time travel? What do you think? Mention everything in the comment section. Oh, and before I forget, shout out to Lucas Salas. for letting me use his soundtracks in this video. This guy makes arrangements of Sly Cooper's soundtracks, which are pretty epic. You should definitely check them out. I'll leave the link of his channel in the description. And other than that, I've been Vivi, and thanks for watching, guys.